My wife and her brother secretly drained me financially, so I quietly exposed them in a shocking twist and let them face it alone. I am 35, male, and Brooke, 33, female, have been married for 7 years. The first 4 were decent, the last 3, well, that's what this story is about. When we first got together, Brooke was this bubbly, ambitious person who seemed to appreciate that I wasn't some smooth talker but a guy who showed up and got things done. That's always been me, the fixer, the reliable one. Fast forward to 2 years ago, when Brooke's brother, Sawyer, 39, male, went through a nasty divorce. Brooke insisted he needed to stay with us, just for a few weeks, while he got back on his feet. Those weeks turned into 8 months, and here's the thing about Sawyer. He's everything I'm not. Talks big, works little, always has some business opportunity that's about to pop off, always needs just a small loan that somehow never gets repaid, drives a leased BMW he can't afford, while I'm still in my 10-year-old Ford truck that actually runs because I maintain it. The dynamic shifted when he moved in. Suddenly, I was outnumbered in my own home. They share inside jokes, they gang up on me. Small stuff at first, mocking how I hold a fork, laughing about how I don't know some celebrity gossip, rolling their eyes when I talk about fixing something instead of just getting a new one. Brooke changed around him, or maybe she was always like this, and I just didn't see it. She started spending more, a lot more, Amazon packages every day, expensive shoes, weekend girls' trips that somehow always cost twice what she estimated. Meanwhile, I'm picking up side gigs on weekends to keep up with the bills. So, last Monday, I came home from a 12-hour shift to find water pouring through the basement ceiling. A pipe had burst in the upstairs bathroom, the one I'd asked Sawyer 3 times not to use because I was replacing a valve that weekend. But he'd used it anyway, left the water running, and then gone out with Brooke to some wine tasting thing. I shut off the main water valve and started assessing the damage. The basement was flooded, our storage boxes soaked through, photo albums, Christmas decorations, my dad's old records, all sitting in 3 inches of water. I texted Brooke, pipe burst, basement flooded, where are you? She replied 2 hours later, OMG, that sucks, at Bistro with Sawyer. Can you handle it? We already ordered. So, I handled it. Called around for emergency plumbers. But the earliest anyone could come was Thursday. Went to the hardware store, got supplies, and started the cleanup myself. No sleep, no food, just hours of shop vacuuming water, cutting out damaged drywall, and ripping up the cheap carpet we'd installed when we moved in. By 3 in the morning, I was still at it, my knees raw from kneeling on concrete, my hands blistered from wringing out soaked materials, my stomach empty because I hadn't eaten since lunch the previous day. Every muscle ached, my eyes burned from exhaustion. That's when I heard them come home, laughing. The front door slammed, there were footsteps above, then the basement door opened, and Brooke appeared at the bottom of the stairs, martini glass still in hand. She looked around at the disaster zone, at me kneeling there in soaked clothes, surrounded by piles of ruined carpet and belongings. She wrinkled her nose. It smells awful down here. I just stared at her 7 years together, and that's what she had to say. Sawyer appeared behind her, beer in hand, surveying the scene like some kind of home inspector. He took a long swig and laughed. Damn, bro, doesn't your back hurt? Should have waited for a pro. I explained the earliest a pro could come was Thursday. That's why you need connections, he said, as if his connections had ever produced anything useful. Brooke stepped further into the basement, careful not to get her shoes wet. She pointed to a corner I hadn't reached yet. You missed a spot, like always. Those 4 words hit different, like always, as if this was just another example of my perpetual inadequacy. Sawyer thought this was hilarious. He's not a man, he's a breathing tool with debt. They both laughed, not the kind of laugh when something's genuinely funny, the kind where they're laughing at someone, not with them. I said nothing, just kept working. Brooke yawned dramatically. Don't stop now, we still need the upstairs done. Then they went back upstairs talking about some restaurant they wanted to try this weekend. I stayed in that basement until 6 in the morning, finished the cleanup as best I could, showered, changed, went to work with 0 sleep. That whole day was a fog. I kept replaying those moments in my head. 7 years with this woman. 7 years of picking up extra shifts to cover her spending. 7 years of fixing everything while being treated like I was nothing. Something broke in me that night, not in a dramatic movie moment way, more like when a foundation slowly cracks over time and finally gives way after one too many storms. I went through the motions that day, came home, nodded at whatever Brooke was saying about dinner plans, declined joining them at some new tapas bar, told them I needed to finish the basement. But I didn't go to the basement. I went to our home office, opened the file cabinet, started looking at our finances with new eyes. What I found shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. Credit card statements showing thousands spent at stores I'd never heard of, transfers to Sawyer's account labeled as temporary loans. Our savings account had less than $1,000 left. For 3 hours, I dug through everything: bank statements, insurance policies, mortgage documents, property tax records. I took pictures, made notes, created a spreadsheet. Then I started making calls. Old friends, my cousin who went through a nasty divorce last year, left messages for a financial advisor buddy from high school. By midnight, I had the skeleton of a plan. Nothing illegal, nothing that would hurt anyone physically, just a way to finally stand up for myself after years of being stepped on. I went to bed next to Brooke, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose. She rolled over, half asleep, and murmured, "Did you finish the basement?" "Almost," I said. "Don't forget to call off work tomorrow to fix the upstairs bathroom," she mumbled before falling back asleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything I'd discovered and everything I was about to do. 3 days later, they started calling non-stop, but by then, it was already too late. So after that night in the basement, I went to work the next day, running on fumes and Red Bull, kept to myself. My buddy Mike noticed something was off and asked if I was good. I just said home stuff, and he backed off. Real friends know when to push and when to leave it alone. During lunch, I called my old high school friend Derek. We're not close anymore, but he's done well for himself, handling people's money. Told him I needed advice, not officially, just friend to friend. We set up a coffee meet for that afternoon. Meeting Derek was eye-opening. I laid out my situation without the emotional details, just the cold numbers, our mortgage, the credit card debt, the dwindling savings, the loans to Sawyer. Derek's face said it all before his mouth did. "Lucas, man, you're being bled dry here." He helped me understand my options. I wasn't trying to hide assets or do anything sketchy, just protect what was rightfully mine while I figured out next steps. By the time I left that coffee shop, I had a game plan: document everything, secure my personal finances, prepare for independence, let consequences happen naturally. That night, I got home later than usual. Brooke barely noticed, scrolling through her phone while some reality show played in the background. Sawyer was out networking, his code for drinking with people who might give him money for his next failed scheme. I casually mentioned I'd be working overtime for the next few weeks. Brooke perked up at this. Overtime meant more money. She immediately started talking about a weekend spa trip she'd been eyeing. "That sounds nice," I said. "You should definitely book it." She seemed surprised by my easy agreement. Usually, I'd ask about cost or suggest alternatives. Not this time. This time, I was all for her spending money we didn't have. The next morning, I went to my bank on my way to work, opened a new individual account at a different bank entirely, changed my direct deposit information for my next paycheck. Not all of it, just 80%. Enough to make a difference, but not enough to raise immediate red flags. Over the next week, I quietly gathered documents, took photos of everything important when nobody was home, created a folder in my cloud storage called New Project that contained all our financial records and evidence of Brooke and Sawyer's spending. I found some truly wild stuff. Sawyer had borrowed over $15,000 in the past 8 months. Brooke had a credit card I didn't even know about with an $8,000 balance. There were Venmo transfers too, people I'd never heard of, $300 dinner tabs on weeknights, and all this time I'd been brown bagging lunch and taking on extra weekend work, thinking we were saving for a house renovation. The hardest part was acting normal. I'm not great at hiding my feelings, but anger is a powerful motivator. Every time I felt myself slipping, I just remembered Brooke's face in the basement. "You missed a spot," like always. So I played it cool, asked about their days, nodded at Sawyer's latest business idea, some app that would revolutionize dog walking or whatever, kissed Brooke goodbye in the mornings. But little things changed. I stopped fixing things immediately. The kitchen faucet developed a small leak. I mentioned I'd get to it soon. The internet kept dropping out. I shrugged and said I'd look into it next week. Their annoyed looks were almost worth the inconvenience to myself. 10 days in, I found an apartment. Nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, clean, affordable, month-to-month lease, paid the security deposit from my new account, didn't move anything in yet, just secured the option. 2 weeks in, the first domino fell. I was at work when my phone lit up with a text from Brooke. "Why is my card declining in the middle of checkout?" I waited 30 minutes before responding, just said I'd look into it that evening, then muted notifications. By the time I got home, Hurricane Brooke was in full effect. She met me at the door, waving her phone, showing me the embarrassing scene at the register, how she had to leave her stuff and walk out, how she tried to use our joint card, and that was declined too. I furrowed my brow, acted confused, said I'd check our accounts. "I don't understand," I said, looking at our nearly empty checking account. "The mortgage payment went through, but I thought we had more buffer than this." Brooke's face went from angry to worried. "This wasn't the script usually," I'd apologize. "Transfer money from savings, fix the problem. Not this time." "Let me see what happened," I said, pulling up our bank statements on my laptop. "Looks like a lot of restaurant charges, some big transfers to... Is that Sawyer's account?" Her eyes darted away. "He needed help with rent. He's paying us back next week." Was all I said. "Well, my next check doesn't hit until Friday. Guess we're eating at home until then." The look on her face was priceless, like I'd suggested we start eating furniture. Sawyer came home around 11 at night, slightly drunk. I was in the garage, organizing tools and secretly packing a few valuables that were definitely mine. Family heirlooms, tools my dad left me when he passed. He leaned against the door. "Heard there was some money drama, you guys cutting me off or what?" I looked up from my socket wrench set. "Not intentionally, just tight until payday." He snorted. "Figured you'd have better control of your finances. Isn't that your whole thing? Being responsible?" I shrugged. "Everyone makes mistakes." Day 17 was when things really got interesting. Brooke logged into our cable account to watch something on the streaming service and discovered it was shut off for non-payment. "Did you forget to pay this too?" she called from the living room. "Must have," I said from the kitchen, where I was making a sandwich. "Been distracted with work. I'll handle it next week." "Next week? What am I supposed to watch now?" I took a bite of my sandwich. YouTube's free. The next few days were a symphony of small inconveniences. The fancy coffee subscription wasn't renewed. The cleaning service I'd apparently been paying for, news to me, called asking about their invoice. Sawyer's gym membership on our credit card naturally was declined. Through it all, I maintained this calm, slightly confused demeanor, just a guy who's a bit overwhelmed and dropping some balls. Nothing suspicious. On day 21, I took a personal day without telling anyone. Went to my new apartment and set up the bare necessities: air mattress, basic kitchen stuff, clothes for 2 weeks, important documents, family photos, my laptop. That evening, I accidentally left an email open on my computer, an overdue notice for our water bill. Brooke saw it and lost it. "What is happening with you? It's like you're deliberately letting everything fall apart." I closed the laptop, looked her in the eye. "I'm just tired, Brooke. Been working a lot. Things slip through the cracks." "Well, fix it. I can't deal with this stress." The irony was completely lost on her. On day 23, the big one hit. Brooke's main credit card was canceled due to non-payment. I'd been making minimum payments for years, keeping the account on life support despite her maxing it out repeatedly. When my latest payment accidentally didn't go through, they finally pulled the plug. She called me screaming from the mall. I let it go to voicemail. Then Sawyer called, then Brooke again and again and again. I was at my new apartment, setting up internet service. My phone kept buzzing like an angry hornet, 27 missed calls by sundown. I texted Brooke once, in a work meeting, "We'll call later." That night, I didn't go home, slept on my air mattress in my new place, turned my phone off. The next morning, I had 53 missed calls, 38 text messages, and 16 voicemails. Most were variations on "where are you" and "call me now," but one voicemail from Brooke caught my attention. Her voice was different, scared. "Lucas," Sawyer's friend from the bank, called. He said, "There's something weird with our accounts. Said you've been moving money around. What's going on? I'm actually scared. Please call me." So, that's where I am now, day 25 of my silent strategy. Phone still blowing up, Brooke and Sawyer panicking as their financial house of cards collapses, me finally feeling in control for the first time in years. Tomorrow, I answer the phone. Tomorrow we have the conversation they never saw coming, and trust me, you're going to want to hear about that one. So, where were we? Day 26 of my plan, 26 days since that night in the basement when something finally broke inside me. I'd been ignoring their calls for over a week, living in my new apartment, and watching from a distance as their financial situation imploded. That morning, I woke up on my air mattress, feeling strangely peaceful, made instant coffee in a plastic mug I'd grabbed from the dollar store, sat on my folding chair, looking out the window at a view of absolutely nothing special, just the parking lot of my apartment complex. But it was mine. No one was going to walk in and mock me here. At exactly 10 in the morning, I turned my phone back on. It immediately exploded with notifications, texts, missed calls, voicemails, even some Facebook messages from mutual friends asking if I was okay because Brooke was worried sick. Funny how someone can ignore you for years until you stop being useful. I scrolled through the messages. Brooke's tone had evolved from angry to panic to pleading. Sawyer's messages were more consistent, mostly variations of WTF, man, and answer your damn phone. The most recent text from Brooke caught my eye, sent at 3 in the morning. Please, Lucas, I know you're mad, but we need to talk. I don't understand what's happening. I'm scared. Good, she should be. I called her back. She answered on the first ring. The conversation was short. She started with the tears, asking where I was, why I disappeared, what was happening with our money. I cut through it all with simple facts. I knew about the credit cards. I knew about the money to Sawyer. I knew about the lies. She switched tactics, tried anger. How dare I just vanish? How could I do this to her? That's when I said we needed to meet in person, not at our house, somewhere public. I suggested the coffee shop near her favorite mall, neutral territory. She agreed immediately, asked if we could meet right away. I said 2 in the afternoon, gave me time to prepare. By 1:30, I was sitting at a corner table with my laptop open and a folder of printouts beside me, ordered a black coffee, and waited. Brooke arrived at 1:55, not alone. Sawyer was with her, of course. They spotted me and headed over, Brooke looking like she'd been crying. Sawyer trying to look tough but mostly looking hungover. As they sat down, I noticed something that would have been easy to miss if I hadn't been looking for it. They weren't making eye contact with each other. Interesting. Brooke started with the waterworks again. Where had I been? Why would I disappear? Did I know how worried she was? I took a sip of my coffee, let the silence hang there until it got uncomfortable. 7 years, I finally said. 7 years I've been carrying us while you two treated me like the help. 7 years of working overtime while you maxed out credit cards. 7 years of being mocked in my own home. Sawyer tried to interrupt, something about how I was being dramatic. I held up my hand. I'm not finished. Then I opened my laptop, turned it around, and showed them my spreadsheet. Every transaction for the last 3 years. Every transfer to Sawyer's account. Every unexplained withdrawal. Every maxed credit card. All color-coded and categorized. $15,000 to Sawyer in 8 months, I said, pointing to the total. That's not counting the rent I haven't charged him, or the food, or the utilities. Brooke's face went from sad to confused to something harder to read. You've been tracking all this, like spying on me? It's called managing our finances, something one of us needed to do. Then I showed them the second spreadsheet, the one listing all the times they'd insulted me, mocked me, laughed at me, dates, times, exact quotes, 3 years worth. You've been documenting everything we say? Sawyer asked, his face somewhere between angry and freaked out. Not everything, just the parts where you treat me like garbage. Brooke tried a new angle, said she didn't realize how I'd been feeling, that we could work this out, that she loved me. That's when I pulled out the folder. Inside was a stack of papers, including printouts of text messages between Brooke and Sawyer that I'd found while backing up her phone as a favor months ago, messages mocking me, planning purchases they knew I'd oppose, laughing about how I wouldn't say no because I never did, and, right on top of that stack, divorce papers. I'm not here to negotiate, I said, sliding them across the table. I'm here to inform. Sawyer started getting loud then, called me names, said I couldn't just walk away, said I owed them. That's when the most interesting thing happened. Brooke turned to him and snapped, "Shut up, Sawyer, this is your fault." And that's when I realized they'd already been fighting. My disappearance had created a vacuum, and they'd turned on each other. Sawyer looked at her like she'd slapped him. My fault? You're the one who's been spending like crazy to keep up with your lifestyle, living in our house, eating our food, borrowing our money that you never pay back. They went back and forth like this while I just sat there, watching years of alliance crumble in minutes. Eventually, I cut in. The mortgage is paid through next month. I've already moved out. My lawyer will contact you about the house. We can sell it and split whatever's left after the debt. Or you can buy me out, your choice. Brooke finally seemed to realize this was actually happening. You're really leaving me over money? I almost laughed. No, Brooke, the money is just evidence. I'm leaving because for years, I've been a tool to you, something to use and mock and take for granted. I stood up, closed my laptop and gathered my things. Remember that night in the basement, when I was on my knees cleaning up water at 3 in the morning, and you told me I missed a spot, like always? That's when I knew we were done. As I turned to leave, Sawyer called after me, asked what he was supposed to do now, where was he supposed to go? I shrugged. Not my problem anymore. The next few weeks were an adjustment. My new place slowly started feeling like home. I bought a real bed, a decent couch, a small TV, nothing fancy, but all mine. Brooke alternated between angry texts and pleading ones. I only responded to messages about the divorce and house. My lawyer handled most of it. What surprised me were the friends who reached out. People I thought were our friends turned out to be more mine than I realized. Mike from work invited me over for dinner with his family. My cousin helped me move the rest of my stuff when Brooke was out one day. Even my neighbor from the old house texted to say he'd noticed the change and was glad I was standing up for myself. The divorce proceedings weren't fun, but they weren't as bad as I'd feared. With all my documentation, there wasn't much to argue about. We agreed to sell the house and split the proceeds after paying off our joint debt. Brooke kept trying to delay, hoping I'd change my mind. I didn't. 3 months later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Sawyer. He was living with a friend now, said Brooke had kicked him out a week after our coffee shop meeting, said he realized he'd been a jerk, asked if we could talk sometime. I left him on read. 6 months after that night in the basement, the house finally sold. After paying off the mortgage and credit cards, there wasn't much left to split, but I didn't care. The money wasn't the point. Now, a year out, my life is normal, quiet. I work my regular hours, come home to a clean apartment that stays clean because I'm the only one living in it, cook, simple meals, started taking a community college class. Just because I've always been interested in woodworking, built myself a decent coffee table. Brooke met someone new, according to social media. Good for her. Maybe she treats him better. Maybe he stands up for himself more than I did. Not my concern anymore. The weirdest part, I ran into them at the hardware store last month. She was holding a paint sample, he was pushing the cart. They looked ordinary. We nodded awkwardly at each other and moved on. As I drove home, I realized I felt nothing. No anger, no regret, just nothing. And that's when I knew I'd truly moved on. Funny how your life can completely change because of one moment, one realization, one decision to finally say enough. Anybody else have a moment like that, when you finally saw clearly what you'd been blind to for years?